The next time you're on a flight, take a moment to look out the wings. You probably see the flaps, the engines, maybe a little flashing light. But what you're actually looking at is a massive, flying swimming pool full of highly flammable jet fuel. You see, for decades, aviation engineers have quietly tucked thousands of gallons of fuel right inside the wings. But why? Why not in the belly of the plane, or maybe the tail? Well, today, we're answering a question you probably never thought to ask: why airplane wings are actually giant fuel tanks. All this we are going to learn today on Everyday Simple Science with Ray. If you're new here, kindly subscribe to our channel, like and share this explainer, and help us reach new people who are interested in learning about the what, why, and how of the universe.
To understand this, we'll be looking at 4 key areas today. First, the economics of space. Second, the physics of balance. Third, something called wing bending relief. And finally, safety and design.
Let's start with part 1, the economics of space and maximizing the fuselage. You know, the simplest, yet probably the most financially critical reason for this engineering choice really comes down to spatial economics. When designing an aircraft, literally every single inch of internal volume has to be carefully justified. Just think about the main body of the airplane, the fuselage. That is the primary revenue generator for an airline. They want to pack that tube with as many passengers, suitcases, and cargo pallets as physically possible. Now, if a massive swimming pool-sized fuel tank had to be squeezed inside that main body, it would eat up incredibly valuable seating and cargo space. But look at the wings. To generate enough lift to fly, wings have to be large and they have to be thick. But structurally, they don't need to be solid metal. Inside that outer skin, a wing is actually mostly empty space, supported by a skeleton of metal ribs. So instead of leaving all that massive volume completely empty, engineers realized it was the perfect rent-free storage unit for liquid jet fuel. Turning a necessary hollow structure into active storage is truly a hallmark of smart design.
To put that spatial efficiency into perspective, a Boeing 777 stores over 45,000 gallons of jet fuel, and almost all of it is stored entirely within the wings, which aerospace engineers often refer to as wet wings. Moving on to part 2, the physics of balance and maintaining a stable center of gravity. Saving space is really just the beginning. Storing fuel in the wings is fundamentally tied to keeping the flight path perfectly stable. An airplane's stability depends entirely on its center of gravity. This is that critical point over which the aircraft's mass is perfectly balanced. Imagine, just for a moment, that you're walking while carrying a very heavy backpack. If someone were to suddenly yank 30 pounds out of that backpack mid-step, you'd stumble backward, right? Well, airplanes face a similar but much larger problem. A big jet burns tens of thousands of pounds of fuel during a long flight. If all that heavy fuel was stored in the front or the back of the fuselage, the plane's center of gravity would drastically shift as that fuel was consumed. The nose of the plane would start to pitch up or pitch down dangerously.
So, how exactly do they solve this? Well, the wings are perfectly aligned with the airplane's center of lift. By keeping the fuel right there, the weight sits exactly where the airplane is already supported by the air. As the fuel burns off, the plane gets lighter overall, but its critical point of balance remains perfectly stable. Advanced fuel systems actively pump and consume this jet fuel symmetrically, making sure both wings lose weight at the exact same rate. This dynamic balancing act is so absolutely crucial that some specialized aircraft like the supersonic Concorde actually use dedicated trim tanks to actively manage their center of gravity as the pressure shifted during supersonic flight. This brings us to part 3, wing bending relief and the core of aerostructural mechanics. Now we arrive at what might be the most brilliant yet totally hidden aspect of aircraft engineering. Think about what happens when a massive commercial airliner takes off. What prevents those long extended wings from simply snapping off under the immense strain?
The forces at play right where the wing meets the fuselage are, quite frankly, staggering. During flight, the wings generate massive amounts of lift, pushing everything upward. Engineers call this upbending. Meanwhile, the heavy fuselage, packed with passengers and cargo, is pulling downward at the wing root. This opposing force creates a really intense bending moment. If the wings were completely empty, they'd bend upward dramatically, putting a dangerous amount of strain on the metal. But by filling the wings with heavy jet fuel, the downward weight of that fuel actively fights the extreme upward force of the lift. They call this downbending. The heavy weight of the fuel acts as a vital counterweight, literally relieving the stress on the wing structure itself.
Aviation writer J. Mac McClellan illustrates this concept perfectly. He says, imagine lifting an object using only the tips of your extended fingers. Not easy. Now, spread the weight across the extended fingers and you can lift a much greater load. By distributing the mass of the fuel all along the length of the wing, engineers are protecting the vulnerable wing root from catastrophic overload.
This physics principle is actually codified in an aviation limitation known as the maximum zero fuel weight. Basically, this is the maximum allowed weight of an aircraft before any additional payload has to be carried exclusively as fuel inside those wings. The legendary aviation pioneer Bill Lear accurately called this the wing-bending weight limit, because in a very real sense, the jet fuel isn't just an energy source for the engines, it's actual structural support. Which leads us to part 4, safety and design and engineering survivability. Finally, we need to look at how this specific design choice fundamentally protects human life during emergencies. Jet fuel is, by its very nature, highly combustible. If an airplane has a rough landing or maybe a landing gear failure, the belly of the fuselage is the most likely part to scrape along the runway. If the main fuel tanks were sitting right under the passenger floor, the risk of a catastrophic fire would be incredibly high. So by storing the fuel far out in the wings, engineers keep the most dangerous element of the aircraft isolated, far away from the passengers. Plus, out on the wings, any potential leaks direct the fuel streams away from the aircraft's body and the engines. And during normal flight, the high-altitude, freezing air rushing over the wings acts like a giant natural radiator, keeping the fuel safely cooled down. Modern aviation also uses some highly sophisticated technology to prevent the fuel tanks themselves from becoming a hazard. Following the tragic loss of TWA Flight 800 back in 1996, which was caused by a center fuel tank explosion, the industry mandated some new safeguards. Today, aircraft use nitrogen generation systems. These systems constantly pump inert, nitrogen-enriched air into the wet wings as the fuel that's consumed. By pushing out the volatile oxygen in the empty space of the tank, they effectively collapse the fire triangle. This makes it nearly impossible for a random spark to ignite fuel vapors inside the wing.
The wet wing really is an elegant solution to a massive engineering puzzle. It perfectly balances economics, physics, structural integrity, and safety. But it does leave us with a provocative thought. As the aviation industry looks toward decarbonization and hydrogen fuel, which by the way requires significantly more volumetric storage space than traditional kerosene, will the elegant wet wings survive the future of flight? Or are engineers going to have to completely reimagine the shape of aircraft to come?
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the hidden architecture of flight. Please subscribe to Everyday Simple Science with Ray. Like and share this explainer, and turn on your notifications so you never miss an episode. Also, be sure to click and watch the explainer currently showing on your screens. Until next time, stay curious.